Have you ever noticed that there are people who never need to raise their voices, never need to prove anything, never need to chase after anyone, and yet they control everything around them? It's not luck, it's not charisma, and it's definitely not kindness. It's technique, it's strategy, it's pure distilled Machiavelli, working exactly as real life demands, a politics guided by reality, not by beautiful ideals that don't pay the bills, don't protect reputations, and don't guarantee respect. The truth is harsh, but liberating. Most people live as emotional subjects. They beg for attention, explanation, validation. They expect permission to exist. Meanwhile, a silent minority dominates rooms, conversations, opportunities, and even effective relationships using tools that almost no one dares to admit exist. Forbidden tools. Strategies that operate in the underground of the human mind, where the end justifies the means, and where being slightly feared is worth more than being greatly loved. And this is where your journey begins. Because when you understand these 10 strategies, you stop playing the game as a spectator and start acting as the one who truly sets the rules. You see hidden patterns, you anticipate moves, you create presence without making a sound. And for the first time, you realize that nothing, absolutely nothing, that you've been told about influence, power, and respect is true. What works is hidden. And today, you're going to learn everything. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now, not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. He always knew that silence has a weight that no word can reach. It's not that uncomfortable silence, but the calculated silence, used as a strategic tool, almost as Machiavelli would when observing the court before making a move. When someone masters this silence, they practice a politics guided by reality, not by ideals, because they know that people reveal more when you say nothing. It is in this empty space that the other tries to fill the discomfort and delivers valuable information without realizing it. The end justifies the means when the intention is to deeply understand real human nature, and that is why the wise person prefers to listen rather than react. The power of this silence lies precisely in not explaining everything, in not justifying oneself, in not rushing to clear up misunderstandings. The person who resists the impulse to explain themselves transmits strength, transmits clarity, transmits presence, and ironically inspires more respect than 1,000 words. It's almost as if they carry their own loyal armies simply with the way they breathe. Those who observe learn that this posture is a form of calculated use of force, and there is no more elegant force than that which manifests itself without raising one's voice. When someone uses strategic pauses, they create an internal rhythm that commands the attention of others without needing volume or haste. The pauses make each sentence seem more important, more intentional, as if there were virtù and fortuna behind every gesture. This person understands that excessive explanations open space for distorted interpretations, attacks, and manipulations. Therefore, they prefer the path of avoiding being hated, but still maintaining the aura that it is better to be feared than loved in certain critical moments. A practical example of this is in work meetings. While everyone tries to show off by talking non-stop, the strategist waits, observes, and when finally speaking, delivers a clean, direct sentence that is impossible to ignore. It seems simple, but it requires constant adaptability to avoid the temptation to react emotionally. They practice this power by speaking more slowly, responding with a "I'll think about it" instead of rushing. Silence creates authority, and authority creates psychological control. The deliberate refusal to explain oneself is one of the most sophisticated weapons that exist, because it dismantles the emotional game of people who depend on immediate validation. When you don't justify yourself, you force the other person to deal with their own imagination, and human imagination is much more intense than reality. Machiavelli knew that those who master the narrative of perception get ahead, and part of that stems from the simple act of not reacting. Imagine someone accusing you of something unjust. The natural instinct is to rush, to deny, argue, defend yourself. The strategist, however, does the opposite, breathes, observes, lets the silence work in their favor. In a few seconds, the other person begins to realize that their words may not carry as much weight as they think. They doubt themselves, they back down, they weaken. This is the power of decisions based on real human nature. They don't depend on noise, they depend on precision. And as you learn to cut out unnecessary explanations, you naturally begin to understand how to reveal less, a theme that leads us directly to the next principle. He always understood that information is power, but real power arises when you have more than you show. Machiavelli already said that politics guided by reality, not by ideals, demands that the strategist never reveal all their cards. The asymmetry of information functions like an invisible safe. No one knows what's inside, but everyone feels there's something valuable there. When you control the flow of what you reveal, you also control the interpretation of what others believe you know. The end justifies the means when the goal is to build a competitive advantage without fanfare, and this includes speaking less, observing more, and filtering every detail that the other person reveals without realizing it. A person who masters this law collects details in common conversations, facial expressions, hesitations, contradictions, as if they were nuggets of psychological gold. It's better to be feared than loved in negotiations, not because you threaten, but because your mind seems too profound to be read. And precisely for this reason, you avoid being hated. Your calm demeanor conveys an appearance of virtue, even while operating with strategic coldness. In the real world, whoever reveals everything loses an advantage. In companies, for example, there's the employee who always talks too much about plans, goals, and ideas, and there's the one who only speaks at the exact moment, in the exact amount, in the exact direction. Guess who grows first? The second one. They act with calculated use of force because they know that poorly distributed information becomes a weapon against them. To apply this to daily life, simply change small attitudes. When someone asks about your goals, answer with generalities. When someone tries to understand your next steps, respond with questions. When someone reveals something sensitive, just record it internally without commenting. This constant adaptability makes you difficult to predict and impossible to manipulate. And this unpredictability makes others try to guess your next move. Having your own loyal armies doesn't mean having people, but having data, perceptions, and secrets that only you know how to interpret. That's where asymmetry becomes an advantage. The great truth is that human beings give away more information when they believe they are receiving undivided attention. Listening with total presence while speaking little is one of the most underestimated strategies in all of power psychology. You gather valuable information effortlessly, and the other person feels gratitude as if they are being understood in depth. Decisions based on real human nature show that when you keep part of your inner world inaccessible, people are naturally more inclined to reveal theirs. This mechanism is as old as the Renaissance court studied by Machiavelli, but as current as job interviews, romantic relationships, and work conversations. When you master this asymmetry, you begin to realize that controlling the flow of information also controls the emotional dynamic. And, interestingly, by learning to conceal the essential, you open space for a new form of influence. One that makes the other person doubt their own importance, something that connects directly to the next point. He always understood that one of the most subtle mechanisms of power is making the other person doubt their own relevance. Not out of cruelty, but out of strategy. Machiavelli pointed out that when someone constantly needs your approval, you hold an advantage, and this advantage stems from a politics guided by reality, not by romantic ideals about human relationships. Selective attention is a silent weapon. When you offer less than expected, you awaken in the other person the feeling that they need to do more to deserve your attention. The end justifies the means when the goal is to avoid fragile bonds or relationships where you are the emotionally submissive one. In social settings, the person who doesn't respond immediately, who doesn't rush to please, who doesn't show exaggerated enthusiasm, creates an aura of mystery. It's better to be feared than loved in this context, not because you push people away, but because you transmit value. The key is to avoid being hated, maintaining an appearance of virtue while regulating the amount of emotional energy you invest. This requires calculated use of force, because you decide where to place your presence like someone positioning their own loyal armies on an invisible chessboard. Domination through irrelevance works especially well in interpersonal relationships, where the other person's ego often depends on external signs of validation. When you start responding with less enthusiasm, with shorter messages, with a studied neutrality, the person enters a psychological state of doubt. Did I do something wrong? Am I not that important after all? This emotional shift activates decisions based on real human nature, not on the romantic ideal that we are all special all the time. A practical example. Instead of rushing to confirm your attendance at a meeting, say, "I'll check my schedule." In relationships, instead of responding in seconds, respond at a pace that matches your life, not the other person's neediness. This constant adaptability creates a curious magnetic field where your presence is valuable precisely because it is rare. And when you decide to show up, it feels like you're offering a gift. Mastering this art is not arrogance, it's strategic emotional intelligence. When you diminish the perceived importance of another person, something profound happens. They begin to compete for your attention. Their self-esteem tries to restore balance, and that's precisely where your strategic advantage arises. Machiavelli understood that whoever controls the pace controls the game, and calculated irrelevance establishes that pace with surgical precision. When you demonstrate that you don't depend on anyone's approval, you automatically become the most valuable element in the equation. This is virtù and fortuna applied to the social field, where luck favors those who know how to position themselves above the anxieties of others. The calculated use of force in this case lies in absence, in appearing less, speaking less, reacting less. And while the other person tries to get closer, you observe, measure, collect data, maintaining a strategic distance that prevents emotional manipulation. This distance, incidentally, is exactly what opens the way for the next level of control, creating environments of uncertainty in which only you know how to navigate. He learned early on that in many scenarios, those who try to organize everything lose. Those who understand chaos and know how to shape it dominate environments that leave others paralyzed. Machiavelli, studying human nature, knew that the world rarely functions linearly. On the contrary, it is full of ruptures, hesitations, and contradictions. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that those who embrace this complexity gain an advantage. Creating controlled chaos doesn't mean destroying order, but creating small uncertainties that only you know how to interpret. The end justifies the means when these uncertainties place you in an indispensable position as someone who understands something that nobody else understands. Imagine a project at work where everyone depends on your technical understanding, not because it's impossible, but because you were the only one who studied the subject in depth. It's better to be feared than loved here, because respect is born from competence under pressure. And at the same time, you avoid being hated by maintaining an appearance of virtue, offering help when needed, but never fully revealing your inner structure. This is the calculated use of force in the intellectual field. Creating controlled chaos works like a chessboard with invisible pieces. You know where each piece is, the others don't. To apply this in practice, you can, for example, adopt a serene posture in tense situations, making everyone feel that you know more than you let on. This activates decisions based on real human nature. When the environment is unstable, people flock to the individual who seems unperturbed. This constant adaptability transforms you into a safe haven while also giving you an advantage. In negotiations, introducing unexpected variables such as alternative deadlines, new possibilities, or partial information destabilizes the other side, while you remain unscathed. In personal relationships, you can create a slight emotional uncertainty, not to manipulate, but to prevent others from placing you in an overly predictable position. This calculated deviation from expectations makes your presence more impactful. It's like leading your own loyal armies within the psychological realm. Controlled chaos has an intriguing characteristic. It makes you indispensable. When people realize you can navigate unfamiliar terrain, they naturally begin to depend on your clarity. This is when virtù and fortuna come into play. Skill and opportunity combine to elevate your position. And the more others depend on your ability to interpret chaos, the more power you concentrate without needing to explicitly wield it. Simply exist, simply observe, simply move small levers at the right moment. This requires, of course, calculated use of force, because you don't try to control everything. You only control what matters. And in doing so, you create situations where others remain trapped while you move lightly. This silent, almost invisible advantage is precisely what opens doors to an even more refined form of influence, creating emotional debts that can never be fully repaid. He discovered that the most profound form of influence doesn't arise from brute force, but from the sense of obligation you silently plant in others. This is the core of the game of emotional debt, something Machiavelli would easily understand by observing alliances and favors at court. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows that human beings reciprocate not out of pure altruism, but out of a need for inner balance. When you offer a strategic favor, small, unexpected, done without fanfare, the other person naturally feels they owe you something. The end justifies the means when the intention is to build relationships in which you possess a slight emotional advantage, even while maintaining an appearance of virtue. It's better to be feared than loved in this field, but only in a psychological sense. Those people begin to fear disappointing you. This is the calculated use of force applied to emotions. And the more others perceive that you act without demanding anything, the more committed they become to reciprocating, strengthening the network of your own loyal armies that you build around yourself. The secret lies in offering the right kind of favor. Not too big, so as not to seem manipulative, and not too small, so as not to be forgotten. A practical example is helping someone at a critical moment when no one else has stepped up, reviewing a project, recommending a valuable contact, giving advice that solves a problem. This decision, based on real human nature, generates a profound impact because it comes at the perfect time. The person feels they have received something rare, something that came from someone with constant adaptability and strategic vision. To apply this in everyday life, simply observe opportunities where your gesture will have multiplied emotional value. But it is essential not to charge anything. Charging destroys the charm. The emotional debt needs to be voluntary, silent, self-imposed. This keeps your appearance of virtue intact while strategically making you a difficult figure to contradict. It is virtu and fortuna shaping human connections. Over time, these small emotional debts accumulate and create a psychological field around you. It's not explicit, it's not said, it's not imposed. People simply feel they owe you something, and this changes how they act. They consult you before making important decisions, avoid contradicting you, seek your validation. This is the calculated use of force at the most subtle level. And however curious it may seem, you avoid being hated precisely because you are generous, even if there is a strategy behind it. Machiavelli would know how to explain this. Those who understand the weight of gratitude forge unbreakable alliances. And while everyone tries to force influence, you achieve it naturally, without haste. The end justifies the means when your presence creates a sense of security and leadership. And as a consequence, you become increasingly irreplaceable, exactly the principle that paves the way for the next topic. He realized that in the game of power, it's not enough to be good, you have to be irreplaceable. This is the heart of zero replaceability, one of the most refined strategies Machiavelli hinted at when discussing virtù and fortuna. Skill and destiny favor those who build a unique position on the social chessboard. In politics guided by reality, not ideals, value lies not in being likable, polite, or hardworking, but in possessing something that no one else possesses. It could be rare technical knowledge, a deep understanding of real human nature, a talent that few can replicate, or connections that only exist through you. The end justifies the means when your intention is to protect your position in any circle, becoming a fundamental piece in the functioning of that environment. It's better to be feared than loved in this respect, not out of aggression, but because the absence of someone like you represents a risk, and everyone knows it. The calculated use of force here is mental. You choose where you invest energy to become indispensable. And in doing so, you build your own loyal armies of people who depend on your unique ability. Creating zero replaceability requires two simultaneous actions: honing what few master and avoiding sharing everything you know. This is the perfect intersection of strategy and psychology. To apply this in everyday life, you can, for example, become a reference in your field by studying books that others ignore, such as works on strategy, negotiation, and human behavior. You can develop rare skills, such as emotional reading, persuasive writing, or conflict resolution, which become invaluable in any environment. Decisions based on real human nature show that people value what they perceive as scarce. And paradoxically, when you share only what is necessary and keep advanced nuances to yourself, your relevance increases. This constant adaptability means that, in times of crisis, everyone thinks of you first. And when someone becomes the first point of contact in difficult situations, they achieve silent power, a power that doesn't need to be announced. This reinforces your appearance of virtue and, at the same time, creates strategic dependence. When you master the art of zero replaceability, your absence outweighs your presence. People begin to realize that, without you, meetings stall, decisions get bogged down, and projects lose direction. This is the pinnacle of the calculated use of force. You don't need to raise your voice, impose authority, or demand respect. The structure around you simply crumbles a little when you're not there. Machiavelli would understand this phenomenon as a direct result of virtù. Your skill creates a natural impact, and fortune opens opportunities to showcase that skill at critical moments. Avoiding being hated is also part of this art, because you maintain a posture of collaboration and an appearance of virtue, even knowing that real power comes from the fact that no one can replace you. This combination creates a psychological field where your value becomes too evident to be challenged. And as this dependence strengthens, the chance arises to manipulate deep emotional patterns, especially those linked to intermittent validation, which will be the next step in the climb to power. He realized that human beings don't respond to constant validation, they respond to its unpredictable rhythm. This is the basis of intermittent validation, a powerful psychological tool that Machiavelli observed when analyzing how princes kept their allies constantly on their toes, always wanting more. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows that predictability breeds boredom, while unpredictability creates emotional dependence. When you offer approval irregularly, a sincere compliment here, a calculated silence there, you activate a deep validation-seeking mechanism in the other person. The end justifies the means when your goal is to keep people engaged, motivated, and emotionally aligned with you. It's better to be feared than loved in this game, because the loved one becomes predictable. The feared one, on the other hand, maintains the mystery that fuels the need. Avoiding being hated, however, is essential. You alternate approach and distance with balance, maintaining an appearance of virtue. This is the calculated use of force in the emotional sphere, and when applied subtly, creates your own loyal armies that await your next approval. Intermittent validation acts like an emotional switch, sometimes on, sometimes off, always unexpected. To apply it in everyday life, you can praise someone for something specific, like an insight, a skill, or an attitude, and in the following days, remain neutral. This oscillation creates, neurologically, the same reinforcement pattern as behavioral addictions. Decisions based on real human nature show that the brain releases more dopamine when it doesn't know if the reward will come. Therefore, when you appear with a brief moment of approval, the other person feels a disproportionate impact. This requires constant adaptability to avoid overdoing it. The intention is not to manipulate out of malice, but to structure relationships where you set the emotional pace. In work environments, for example, recognizing effort at random moments creates more engaged teams. In personal relationships, mixing warm presence with periods of silence generates psychological depth. All of this reinforces your appearance of virtue, even if the movement is strategically calculated. The big secret is that intermittent validation makes people interpret your approval as something rare, and what is rare becomes valuable. Machiavelli would understand this as virtue applied to human emotions, knowing exactly when to offer a gesture, a word, or a look that reconfigures the other person's psychological state. The calculated use of force here is subtle, almost invisible, but extremely effective. The person starts to observe you more, adjust their behavior, seek closeness. Avoiding being hated is simple. Just make sure your validations are genuine and that your silence never seems like punishment, but naturalness. This balance creates bonds that don't easily break. And by mastering this dynamic, you begin to see a curious effect. The more the other person desires your approval, the more clearly you see their insecurities. And it is from this reflection that the next principle is born, the inverted mirror, capable of transforming another's vulnerability into a source of strategic advantage. He discovered that one of the most efficient ways to get to know someone and at the same time influence them is to subtly reflect their insecurities while projecting absolute invulnerability. Machiavelli would perfectly understand this mechanism, as it stems from politics guided by reality, not by romantic ideals of emotional transparency. The inverted mirror works like this. While people try to hide their weaknesses, you observe them and reflect back behaviors that make them realize their own contradictions. The end justifies the means when the goal is to create awareness in the other, not through direct confrontation, but through behavioral reflections. It's better to be feared than loved in this psychological game, because those who fear observe more, and those who observe more correct themselves. But at the same time, it's essential to avoid being hated, maintaining an appearance of virtue that makes everything seem natural, almost pedagogical. This calculated use of emotional force transforms you into a mirror that reveals without ever revealing yourself. And while this happens, you walk with your own loyal armies within the other's mind, their fears, their doubts, their patterns. Applying the inverted mirror technique in practice is like guiding an invisible dance. When someone tries to appear overconfident, you respond with absolute calm, exposing the exaggeration. When someone tries to hide insecurity, you pretend not to notice, and the silence itself makes the person lose their composure. Decisions based on real human nature show that human beings regulate themselves emotionally through contrast. Thus, when you maintain a solid posture, low voice, steady gaze, slow movements, the other person's fragility stands out. This contrast increases your social value even if you don't say a word. Constant adaptability also comes into play here. You adjust your rhythm, tone, and even gestures as you read the environment, showing that your presence dictates the rules. For those who wish to apply this technique, simply train your attention. Observe patterns, reactions, and breaks in expectations. A deep reading of the other person transforms any situation into a strategic stage, where your virtuous appearance remains intact while you gain emotional ground. The inverted mirror has a curious effect. It dismantles masks without needing to tear them off. The person begins to perceive their own inconsistency and naturally adjust themselves in your presence. Machiavelli would call this silent power, the kind that emerges not from brute force, but from simple presence. This is the calculated use of force in its most elegant form. There is no criticism, no imposition, only the reflection that reveals everything. And the more you master this skill, the more you realize that controlling perceptions is controlling narratives. Having your own loyal armies here means having total control over the image you transmit, always superior to the image the other tries to project. This psychological virtue produces a fascinating phenomenon. People begin to trust you more than themselves because your posture reveals truths they cannot see. And it is precisely this point that leads us to the next principle, where you not only reflect reality, you rewrite it. He understood that in the social game, victory doesn't belong to the one who possesses the truth. It belongs to the one who controls the narrative others believe about them. Machiavelli already taught this by showing that politics guided by reality, not ideals, demands total mastery of one's own image. Controlling the narrative acts as an invisible armor. It protects, strengthens, and shapes perceptions even before you open your mouth. When someone tries to accuse you, you don't defend yourself, you redefine the context. When they try to diminish your value, you alter the interpretation of the fact, not the fact itself. The end justifies the means when the goal is to prevent others' narratives from imprisoning you. It's better to be feared than loved in this dynamic because the feared create their own story. The loved live imprisoned by the expectations of others. Avoiding being hated is also essential. You maintain the appearance of virtue while making calculated use of force to guide the plot. In this field, your own loyal armies are not people. They are perceptions, rumors, and interpretations that work in your favor. Controlling narratives means shaping meanings. When something happens, you decide if it was a failure, a learning experience, a strategy, or a plot twist. Decisions based on real human nature show that people follow those who give meaning to events, not those who react to them. To apply this in practice, simply learn to frame situations. If someone questions your silence, you turn it into a focal point. If someone criticizes your distance, you turn it into a personal priority. If someone doubts your abilities, you transform doubt into strategic motivation. This constant adaptability makes your version of events sound more coherent, stronger, and more secure in any scenario. Machiavelli would call this virtù applied to words, the ability to dominate interpretations without needing to confront them directly. Your appearance of virtue reinforces the credibility of the narrative, while the calculated use of force prevents alternative versions from gaining traction. Thus, you become the narrator of your own life, and narrators, by definition, control the stage. The greatest power of controlling the narrative is that, over time, your reality becomes the reality accepted by others. People stop questioning and begin to repeat what you say, strengthening your own loyal armies, now composed of opinions, perceptions, and reputations that protect you even when you are not present. It's a strategy that requires virtù and fortuna, the ability to shape interpretations and perfect timing to present them. Avoiding being hated remains crucial, as the strongest narrative is the one that inspires respect without provoking resistance. The calculated use of force here is discursive, emotional, and symbolic. And when you realize that controlling the story makes you bigger than any attack, you understand something even deeper. Sometimes simply leaving the scene is enough to increase your power. Because when your narrative already dominates the environment, your absence creates a vacuum that no one else can fill, exactly the theme revealed in the next principle. He realized that there is a type of power so sophisticated that it doesn't manifest itself when you speak, but when you are absent. Machiavelli would have understood this mechanism immediately, as it stems from politics guided by reality, not ideals. The empty space always reveals who truly matters. The strategy of the power vacuum consists of withdrawing your presence in a calculated way, creating a silence that weighs more than any discourse. The end justifies the means when this absence reveals your true importance in the social system. When you disappear for a few days, the messages start to arrive. When you stop attending a meeting, the atmosphere loses structure. When you distance yourself emotionally, certain people realize they depended on your stability more than they admitted. It's better to be feared than loved in this context, because the feared are remembered even when they are not present. Still, avoiding being hated is crucial. Your absence must seem natural, not manipulative. This calculated use of force transforms presence into privilege, and others begin to vie for it as their own loyal armies would fight for territory. Applying this strategy requires subtlety and discipline. You don't disappear as an escape, you withdraw as a gesture of power. When someone doesn't value your presence, you purposefully reduce your availability. When an environment ceases to recognize your impact, you allow chaos to take hold on its own. Decisions based on real human nature show that people only value what they lack. And constant adaptability comes in as a strategic tool. You know exactly when to retreat, when to reappear, and when to keep your distance. A simple example is in personal relationships. If you realize you're always giving more than you receive, try pausing your energy flow. Suddenly messages appear, interest returns, respect reappears. Machiavelli would call this symbolic control through absence, a form of virtù that doesn't need to raise its voice, only withdraw with dignity. Your appearance of virtue remains intact because you demand nothing. You simply allow the other to perceive their own emptiness. The power of the vacuum creates a curious phenomenon. Its influence increases when you're not there to exert it. In professional groups, your absence highlights your competence. In friendships, it reveals your maturity. In relationships, it demonstrates your emotional stability. It's the calculated use of force in its most silent and therefore most dominant version. Your own loyal armies are not people, but sensations, longing, absence, need, belated recognition. Avoiding being hated ensures that this vacuum isn't interpreted as punishment, but as a natural movement of someone who knows their own worth. And when you return bigger, more respected, more desired. People perceive that your presence is a differentiator, not an accessory. And that's why this strategy closes the cycle. Whoever learns to master silence, information, irrelevance, chaos, emotional debt, zero replaceability, intermittent validation, the inverted mirror, and narrative, inevitably discovers that the pinnacle of power lies in knowing when to leave the stage. Ultimately, everything you've heard here today isn't about impressing anyone. It's about transforming how you position yourself in the world. Because if you continue living trapped by the rules of the ordinary, you'll continue receiving crumbs of respect, attention, and recognition. Now, if you apply these strategies, even one at a time, you'll notice something powerful happening. People start treating you differently. They observe you more, they listen to you more, and most importantly, they take you seriously. But I need to ask you, and I want you to answer in the comments, because that reinforces the knowledge. Which of these strategies do you feel you should have used a long time ago? And which one will you start applying today? Be honest. Choose one. Write it down. Commit to it. Power doesn't come from information, it comes from action. If this video opened your mind, if it stirred something inside you, if it made you see the game behind the game, then you already know what you need to do. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here you don't learn cheap motivation, you learn real strategy applied to real life, as Machiavelli would teach if he were alive today. The journey continues, and I want you with me on the next step.